الندم تنال أعلى الرتب فعش حياة العلماء وقرأ صنوف الكتب ودم على تواضع لا تفتخر بالنسب كفاك أن تخرج من.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلي وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. Alright, so actually I want to pick up from last week's hadith because I feel like I didn't, towards the end I wasn't able to cover some things. So do you guys remember the hadith? Hadith number 28, is that right? Yes. Hadith al-Irbad ibn Sariyah. And we said the Prophet ﷺ had given them an admonishment, a advice, a word that really affected them, and then they asked the Prophet ﷺ of, these were the advice or the words of a person who is bidding farewell, who is leaving. And so give us an advice. So the Prophet ﷺ had instructed them and told them to have taqwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أوصيكم بتقوى الله والسمع والطاعة وإن تأمر عليكم عبد. In one narration Habashi, in another narration there is no Habashi. But yes, وتأمر عليكم عبد. فمن يعش منكم فسيرى اختلافا كثيرا فعليكم بسنتي وسنة الخلفاء الراشدين المهديين عضوا عليها بالنواجذ. وإياكم ومحدثات الأمور فكل محدثة بدعة. So the last part I want to actually focus on is the fact that the Prophet ﷺ had told us that there are going to be changes. Whoever is going to live after the death of the Prophet ﷺ will see changes happen. But the most beautiful thing about Islam, when it tells us what's going to happen, it does not leave us as it is, but it gives us the solution. And this is why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prohibits something, or when He orders something, when He warns us from something, He tells us what to find a cure. Because really those are diseases, whether they're communal diseases, or diseases of the heart for individuals, whatever the case is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not leave us with an ailment without a cure. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not leave us with an ailment without a cure. But the key is, it's whether you know it or not. So the Prophet ﷺ had told us you'll see different things that will happen, changes. And he gave us the cure to it, what to do. And the answer was, عَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي وَسُنَّةُ الْخُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ الْمَهْدِيِّينَ مِنْ بَعْدِ عَضُّوا عَلَيْهَا بِالنَّوَاجِذِ. So he said the way to deal with this is to hold on to my sunnah. Right, now we have to stop and explain what sunnah means. What's a sunnah? Okay. Did, say, or approved. Or approved. Did, say, or approved. But if you think about it, it really just talks about the way of the Prophet ﷺ, how he acted upon Islam. Okay, the teachings of Islam itself. So this is the sunnah. And I'm saying this because we also have to understand what it means to follow the sunnah of the companions. So the Prophet ﷺ said, عَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي وَسُنَّةِ الْخُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ الْمَهْدِيِّينَ عَضُّوا عَلَيْهَا بِالنَّوَاجِذِ. Follow my sunnah and the sunnah of the four rightly guided khalifas. Now why did the Prophet ﷺ say the sunnah of the four, or he didn't say the four, he said the sunnah of the rightly guided khalifas, and the scholars said that there is four of them. The reason they're saying four is because there's another hadith that says al-khilafatu rashida 30 sana. For the Prophet ﷺ said that the khilafah, the rightly guided khilafah, is 30 years. If you take into account how many years each of the khulafa had taken position, it really will end up to 29 years and a half. 29 years and a half. And so, usually they say, the Arabs round up, 29 years, that is 30. And so they included Abu Bakr, Umar, Ali, and Uthman. Or should I say Uthman, and then Ali. Some scholars say those 6 months were actually occupied by Al-Hasan. Al-Hasan ibn Ali. Were occupied by Al-Hasan before he left the Khilafah to Muawiyah. And so some scholars, included Hasan into this because really he was the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. And subhanAllah, the Prophet ﷺ did prophesize and he said, this son of mine would reconcile between two groups of Muslims. And it really wasn't the time of Hasan. After this, it was a time of unition of Muslims once again. And so some scholars say this because some scholars would put it, but usually they say the four Khulafa. So why did the Prophet ﷺ specify those four, or that time period? Now bear in mind, he said, follow their sunnah. Okay? It means whatever they do is actually part of the religion.
He trusted that they are the
But isn't that opening the doors to something? So the Prophet said, follow my sunnah. We understand the Prophet has revelation. Maryam, salam alaikum. Sorry, I'm sorry. Maryam is a very lovely young girl. She looks at the window. She's very timid and bashful. I ask Allah to keep her that way. But I can't help it. I kind of pull her leg sometimes. So I apologize for that. But anyway, the Prophet, we understand when the Prophet says, follow my sunnah, because the Prophet is a prophet, he's a messenger. He has revelation. He does not speak out of whims and desires. In huwa illa wahyun yuha. Verily he is, he does not speak, he does not speak out of whims and desires, but rather he is guided. Wahyu. He has revelation that guides him. So we understand. But what about the khulafa? Is this opening the doors of innovation? Yes.
He gave them the description as Mahdiyin. They are well guided, so he trusted that.
I know, but can anybody claim that I am rightly guided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
But through his revelation, he knew every single detail will happen to them, and he told them through his life that they will be martyr and they will come for the sake of Allah, and he knew everything. So he knew that they will be really guided and follow the sunnah as well.
That is true. But still, can't anybody else claim other than that? Because the Prophet said, Khilafa, Khulafa al-Rashidin Mahdiyin. And so rightly guided Khalif, which means anybody that rules by Islam, then he's rightly guided. Is that right? So many people can claim this. I'm just saying because sometimes this is a misconception. Okay? People say, oh look, like the Prophet said we can follow their sunnah. Yes?
I don't know if it pertains to this particular question, but as long as they're not going against Islam, or it's okay, like the one leader who told them to jump in the fire.
Okay, so this is just saying as long as it doesn't pertain to conflicting with the regulations or rulings of Islam. I'm actually kind of almost like kind of deceiving you guys by the way I'm posing this. There's a reason I asked you, what does sunnah mean? When the Prophet ﷺ is saying the sunnah of the khulafa, he's talking about their application of the religion, their application. Because, if you talk about Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, how many times in the seerah or in the hadith, you'd see Abu Bakr, the Prophet ﷺ had left with Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. Right? Those are the three individuals the Prophet ﷺ accompanied the most. They were the people who knew the Prophet ﷺ the most. They witnessed the revelations. They lived through everything. They completely understood it. And so the Prophet ﷺ is pointing that their application of the religion is the right application of my teachings. So, because they understood it the best. In addition to, these companions would never do anything, except that if you notice, the companions around them would agree with them. The reason I'm mentioning this is because people will say, listen, this is the sunnah. These four people have done things in Islam that were not at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, which means that it's okay to innovate in this religion. But this contradicts the end of the statement of the Prophet ﷺ in the Hadith when he said, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحْدِثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ, stay away from innovative things. For every innovation would lead you astray. Which means that what they're doing is not an innovation. It is something that is legislated. But even if you look at the examples that people try to use to propagate the idea of it's okay to have bid'ahs in the religion, they say, look, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq had collected the Quran. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
But is that an argument? It is not, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself has called it a book. The Prophet ﷺ himself had ascribers. When the revelation would come, they would ascribe the Quran, write it down. The only difference is it was not bounded, because they could not bind it as long as the Prophet is alive. Because as long as he is alive, there is still revelation. But even the Prophet ﷺ, he would instruct the people, he would say, do not go with a mushaf to the lands of the disbelievers, like warring disbelievers. Right? He told them, do not carry a mushaf. So some of the companions did have this. So this is not an innovation. In addition, the Prophet ﷺ said, follow their sunnah. So this is like meant. They say Umar ibn al-Khattab had gathered people behind one Imam in Taraweeh. So this is a innovation. It was never done in the time of the Prophet. But once again, that is also not true. Because the Prophet in his life, he would say, whoever prays behind the Imam, Taraweeh, until it's done, then he gets the reward of praying the entire night. Isn't this encouraging this? This is legislation over here. But even the Prophet ﷺ, for 3 or 4 nights, or was it 2 or 3? I can't remember, 2 or 3 or 4, 3 or 4 nights. 3 nights, I think. 3 nights. The Prophet ﷺ had prayed with them all Taraweeh. But he stopped for a reason. What was it?
Not to make it mandatory.
He was afraid that it would become mandatory upon him. But after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, would anything be mandatory? No. No, so it's okay to do that. But also in addition, by the way, all the companions agreed. And the companions all together would never agree on something that is wrong. Another thing that would, there's many of these things that would use for evidences, but they're all limited to the, 4 khulafa, which tells you that what is being pointed is how do they apply their religion. Their application of their religion, their understanding is the correct one. And so we always, in the face of the adversary of the changes that we face, the meddling with the religion, the way we have to understand our religion is how the companions understood it, how the companions applied it. Anything else is not the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is really important because we always hear of the progressive Muslims, the importance of looking of the tafsir in the Quran, the new light of modern civilization, whatever they want to call it. But the reality they're doing is that they are changing the teachings. They're bending the words into their understanding, not the understanding of the Prophet ﷺ. Which is, by the way, it's very bad because sometimes certain words in certain cultures have specific meanings. Okay, and we have to understand when we're reading the Quran and the Sunnah, we shouldn't be applying it to our understanding of our cultural biased language, but rather to the Prophet ﷺ's time and what he understood. We see this in some misconceptions sometimes. I'm trying to think of a good example, but the one coming to my mind is an example in a hadith. Sorry?
You mean it's added, right? Like the explanation for the Quran during Tafsir ibn Kathir is totally different than nowadays because it's added.
No, I'm talking about the understanding of it. So Tafsir ibn Kathir, he's explaining it. So the way Ibn Kathir does explanation, he explains the Quran based on first what came in the Quran. So when you do tafsir, you go to different levels. So tafsir al-Quran bil-Quran, which means you explain the Quran by the Quran. Because some verses in the Quran came to explain other verses. For example, وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقِ. What is the tariq? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, النَّجْمُ الثَّاقِبِ. So now we know what the tariq means. It means النَّجْمُ الثَّاقِبِ. Because otherwise the tariq would mean the knocker. Man al-tariq, right? That's knocking, right? But that's not what the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala meant. He meant النَّجْمُ الثَّاقِبِ. So this is the explanation of the Quran with the Quran. And then you go to the explanation of the Prophet ﷺ himself. Because you have to rest assured that the Prophet ﷺ did not leave anything from the Quran except that it was understood. Because otherwise the message would not be complete. If you don't find anything from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you go to the explanation of the companions. If you find nothing, you go to the explanation of the tabi'een. Because they had, really, they kind of almost grilled the Sahaba on the explanation of the Quran. One of the companions, he would say, I would not leave one ayah except I would ask Ibn Abbas what it means. To that extent, every single ayah, you can imagine. The extent of it, they just kind of grilled the Sahaba because they were hungry for knowledge. If you can't find it, then it's based on the Arabic language, because this is what it was revealed in. Which means that for you to understand the Quran, the least of it is you need to understand Arabic with its proper branches of Arabic, which includes Nah, Balagh, Al-Arud, all these things that the basic, any Muslim people speak Arabic, this is far beyond them. It tells you how much you need to know. Nowadays, we have people who were born and raised in the West and say, listen, we need to reinterpret the Quran. Okay, you're saying I need to reinvent the religion. Literally, that's what you're saying. Okay. That our understanding of the Quran is wrong, but your great mind understanding is the correct one. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed to you what it is. This is what you're claiming. And then you see weird, tafsir of the Quran, authorship between the father and the daughter. Okay, the new version of the tafsir of the Quran. This is bad. And unfortunately, a lot of Muslims have fallen into this. You see the progressive Muslims. What are you progressing? Which means that word is kind of funny, because when they say progressive, which means everything else is backwards. It's a funny play on words. It's almost an attack. And it's purposely being used. We are the progressive Muslims. Everybody else is backwards. Everybody else doesn't know what they're doing. Okay? Why don't you just go further and say the Sahaba didn't know what they're doing? And even go further and say the Prophet didn't know it. And then you're going to leap the other one is that you say Allah didn't know what He's doing. Because Allah did not teach us this. Okay? You had to come after 1400 years and, mashallah, illuminate the world. Okay? Yes?
Not the misconception, people or the misguided people who are trying to add or saying everyone is behind. But as I understood and heard from Sheikh Sharawi, like if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give one person the whole explanation, it will be the Prophet ﷺ himself to give the best explanation ever. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants this miracle book to be until the day of judgment, day after day. It will be unlimited open doors. Allah will open the doors for people to get more information according to the era, and then
so I'm going to correct that understanding. It doesn't mean that we don't know the meanings of the Quran. But some of the meanings, we understand it, but the reality of it we haven't seen.
Yes.
Okay? إِذَا انشَقَّتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ وَرْدَةً كَالدِّهَانِ. If the sky splits, and it becomes and looks like a flower. Did the companions understood the explanation, but did they ever see it? Did they see its reality? No, they didn't see its reality. Guess what? Nowadays we see its reality. You see nice, beautiful, telescope photographs, satellite pictures of exploding, things in the sky exploding. It does look like flowers.
So it's a secret, not revealed yet.
So it's not the meanings, but the reality of it emerging. I'll give you another example. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the khamr, فِيهِمَا إِثْمٌ كَثِيرٌ وَمَنَافِعُ لِلنَّاسِ. In them there are harmful, a lot of harmful things, beneficial things and a lot of harmful things. Right? وَإِثْمُهُمَا أَكْبَرُ مِنْ نَفْعِهِمَا. And their worst aspects or the bad things are more than the good things. Only recently, for example, after debating that a glass of wine is good for your health, 2 different scientists have published articles that even that glass of wine or water would increase the chances of you getting 6 different types of cancer. So this, in that explanation, yes, we agree.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we find a different new explanation other than the understanding of the companions. This is not what it means. It means that the realities of the miracles of it will appear over time. That is true. But we still understand the meaning. We understand the meaning when it explodes, it will look like a flower. We understand that. But have we seen it? No. We know from the Quran that the alcohol has benefits, but it also has bad side effects, more harm. But do we understand the details of that harm? No. In the future, we might understand more about the details of that harm. Is that clear? All right. And then the Prophet ﷺ has said, and he warned, he said, وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحْدَثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ. Beware of newly invented matters in religion, because every innovation will lead you astray. Every is a very strong word. It encompasses everything. Anything that the Prophet ﷺ did not teach us, anything that's not part of the religion, will lead you astray. It's not guidance. It will lead you to another path. All right. So then, inshallah, we're going to talk about hadith number 29. Yes? Actually, I forgot. Just pass this around.
The Khulafa Rashidin, in the hadith, are we thinking that they're, based on the other hadith, that they're 30s? Because there's it's a general word. Anybody would be guided, and that's why some say like that.
I said I was pulling your leg. That's an argument. But the scholars are unanimous. This is one of the ways we deduce our methodology of deducing things or rulings in religion. The scholars are unanimous that it's limited to the 4 hadiths. Because also based on the other hadith. That's why they're unanimous. And so anybody who claims afterwards, it's just a claim. It has no basis. But in the end, we rule everybody underneath the umbrella of Islam. If it doesn't go beyond the boundaries of Islam, that's it. So a person cannot say, I'm rightly guided, I'm a rightly guided person, I can legislate new things for you. They cannot say that. Can they say that? No, because even the Sahaba did not do this. They did not legislate new things. Now bear in mind, we're talking about legislation in religion. Yeah, I think this just happened.
Yes, we have one.
Did the brothers have one? Or okay. They're not legislating something new. When we're talking about religious legislation, we're not talking about other legislations, for example, traffic lights, bylaws. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about legislations in religion. What is halal, what is haram? what is a form of worship, what is not a form of worship. All this is only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that clarify it? Okay. Alright, so hadith number 29. This hadith narrated by Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. قال قلت يا رسول الله أخبرني بعمل يدخلني الجنة ويباعدني من النار. قال لقد سألت عن عظيم وإنه ليسير على من يسره الله عليه. تعبد الله لا تشرك به شيئا وتقيم الصلاة وتؤتي الزكاة وتصوم رمضان وتحج البيت. ثم قال ألا أدلك على أبواب الخير الصوم جنة والصدقة تطفئ الخطيئة كما يطفئ الماء النار وصلاة الرجل في جوف الليل. ثم تلا تتجافى جنودهم عن المضاجع حتى بلغ يعملون. ثم قال ألا أخبرك برأس الأمر وعموده وذروة سنامه؟ قلت بلى يا رسول الله. قال رأس الأمر الإسلام وعموده الصلاة وذروة سنامه الجهاد. ثم قال ألا أخبرك بملاك ذلك كله؟ قلت بلى يا نبي الله. فأخذ بلسانه قال كف عليك هذا. قلت يا نبي الله وإننا مؤاخذون بما نتكلم به. فقال ثكلتك أمك. وهل يكب الناس في النار على وجوههم أو على مناخرهم إلا حصائد ألسنتهم؟ رواه الترمذي وقال حديث حسن صحيح. So this hadith is narrated by Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. And he had asked the Prophet ﷺ, he said, O Messenger of Allah, tell me of a deed that will admit me into paradise and keep me away from the hellfire. So this was the question of the Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, you asked about a great matter. But it is easy from whom Allah had made it easy. And then he said, you worship Allah and do not ascribe any partners with Him. Establish the prayer, give the zakah, fast Ramadan, and make the pilgrimage to the house. So I'm going to stop here, inshallah. I'm going to go explain it as we go along. So the first part of the hadith, the Prophet Mu'adh ibn Jabal, and it was kind of like, how Mu'adh ibn Jabal was, and many of the companions were. They would often ask the Prophet ﷺ about things that they thought were really important. And a lot of the questions, many times the Prophet ﷺ would ask the question of what would enable us to enter heaven. What would we do to admit us into heaven and keep us away from the hellfire? It really tells you what their concern is, what's the most important thing on their mind. To the point that actually one of the Bedouins, the Arab, had come to the Prophet ﷺ and he asked him, O Messenger of Allah, I cannot make the dua you and one of the other companions do. And so the Prophet ﷺ asked him, what do you ask? What the dua do you make in your prayer? So he said, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow me to enter into heaven and to keep me away from the hellfire. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, حَوْلَهَ نُدَنْدِنْ. So he said, لَا أَحْسُنْ دَنْدَنَكَ أَنْتَ وَمُعَاذ. I'm not as good as doing the hymns or the things you say, you and Mu'adh. So the Prophet ﷺ said, what do you ask for? He said, I ask for Jannah and seek refuge from the hellfire. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, around this is what we do. So this is the most important thing. This is one of the greatest things a person would ask. This is the most, in reality, really what you strive for the most. And so this is why the Prophet ﷺ had told Mu'adh, you asked about something that is great. Because really, what is greater than wanting to enter heaven and being rescued from the hellfire? Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned, He said, ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. This is the great fawz, the great, fawz, which means what? Winning, the greatest achievement, the greatest, whatever you want to call it. This is what is the greatest thing we should strive for. And so the Prophet ﷺ had told him, you have asked for something that is great. And similar to how everything that is great, sometimes it is hard to achieve. But the Prophet ﷺ said, but it is easy for those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made it easy upon. And so from this we have to realize that we need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to facilitate, we do really need Him, to ask us to facilitate for us and make things easy for us. In fact, this is a dua the Prophet ﷺ had used to make. He would say, وَهْدِينِي وَيَسِّرْ الْهُدَى لِي, and guide me and make guidance easy for me. The Prophet used to make this dua. So you really need to ask, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the dua to Him and depend on Him to facilitate this for us and make it easy for us. Now what you can also take from this is that there are, we can enter Jannah by our actions. That our actions are a result of us entering Jannah. But how to reconcile that with the other hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when he said, لا يدخل أحدكم الجنة بعمله, that none of you will enter Jannah because of his deeds.
Deeds plus the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Say that again?
Our deeds
Yes?
plus the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when both combines, then we can enter the Jannah.
Yes?
She wasn't done yet.
Only mercy of
Hold on,
It's- Our deeds may keep us out of hellfire, but it's the mercy of Allah that gets us into paradise.
Okay. Yes?
Necessary but not sufficient.
Say that again?
Necessary but not sufficient.
Necessary but not sufficient. Okay? I like that one.
only by mercy of
Only by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, we said that even one gift from Allah, if it will be weighted in the balance, it will be heavier than any of all our deeds together.
Okay.
So we need Allah's mercy in order to elevate our good deeds and accept it, so we will be well.
So, all your answers combined is correct. So it's true, our acts are necessary. Like we have to act because this is this is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our bounties. But our actions are not sufficient for us to enter heaven. However, by the way, if you don't enter heaven, the only choice is usually hell. There is a middle ground, but it doesn't last for too long. You always enter into hell, into Jannah anyway, by the mercy of Allah. But it's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He accepts this little act and gives us immense rewards. That accepts it from us. This is why Allah, the Prophet said, إِلَّا يَتَغَمَّدَنِ اللَّهُ بِرَحْمَتِهِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would engulf me with His mercy. And so this is the indication of that our deeds, no matter what, we have to do them, but we should never think that they are enough, that we have the right to enter Jannah. It's not like that. This is the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You really have no right to do anything. You're a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is your job. It is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He rewards you for something that you're supposed to do. That He accepts from you the little, the defective that you do. Okay? And He accepts it from you and rewards you for it and allows you to enter the Jannah. And so this is the first part of the hadith. The Prophet said that you have asked about something that is great, but it's easy. Now our hadith comes to my mind, by the way. One of the reasons it's difficult, by the way, is because the Prophet ﷺ said, حُفَّتِ الْجَنَّةِ بِالْمَكَارِهِ وَحُفَّتِ النَّارِ بِالشَّهَوَاتِ. That the Jannah is surrounded by things that you dislike. And the hellfire is surrounded by desires. Boys at the back, do you have desires? What does that mean? What does that mean? You said yes. So what does desires mean? Basim, what does shahawat mean?
Stuff that you want?
Desire you want, okay? Is everything that you desire, is that good?
No.
Not everything. Right? A lot of these things that we desire is
Mostly bad.
mostly bad. Right? Unless intuitively you desire what Allah desires. So when the Prophet ﷺ tells us that the Jahannam is surrounded by desires, what does that mean?
Your desire. And the stuff that you
Yeah, so if you follow your desires, where are you going to head?
Hellfire.
But isn't it easy to follow your desires? Because you want to, right? On the other hand, Jannah is surrounded by things you dislike. Which means you have to work. Do you like to work? Thank you for being honest. That's true. Who likes to work around here? You like to work? I think we need to talk. Naturally speaking, people like to do work unless they love doing it. But they usually love doing it because there's a higher purpose. We have no problems, for example, doing things for our spouses that we love. Doing things for our kids and children. We sometimes don't have problems. In fact, sometimes we enjoy it. But it still requires work. Sometimes you need to get to that stage. But naturally speaking, you waking up from your beautiful, nice sleep, your cozy bed, in the middle of winter, at maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, that is hard. Isn't it hard? Basil, is it hard or easy?
Really hard.
طيب, you get up though?
Yeah, sometimes. It's not okay.
Inshallah all the time. Just say inshallah all the time. If not, I'm going to have to talk to your father.
No, I do.
It's not, you're not the one to be blamed by this.
Sometimes I wake up before it.
Alhamdulillah. I know sometimes you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? The hajj and stuff. Alright. But this is the dislike, right? You get up from your comfort of bed. These are dislikes, but when you do it, there's a great immense reward for it. And so you're talking about over here, you're striving. But then again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for people who really desire it and want it and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there's also a recipe for things that you can do to make things easier for you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. Whoever has taqwa Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then he would يَجْعَلْ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ, he would make his affairs easy. Now this talks about religious affairs and worldly affairs. يَجْعَلْ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. So this is a nice recipe that we can act upon. فأما من أعطى واتقى, whoever gives and has taqwa, وصدق بالحسنى, and he believed in what is good, فسنيسره لليسرى, we will facilitate him to what's easy for him. Okay. And so the Prophet ﷺ had answered him. He told him, okay, this is what you need, right, to enter Jannah. What was the answer? Boys at the back. What do you need to enter Jannah? Good. How do you attain them? The Prophet ﷺ, this hadith, he mentioned 5 things. What are they? 5 things the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. He said, this is what you need to do to enter Jannah. What are they? That's not 5 things. No, it's not. Yes, but that's not what the Prophet ﷺ mentioned. Where's Faras and Faris? I don't see them. And then Faris, where's Faris? Not here today, okay. I enjoy picking on him. Ahmed, I guess you're going to have to fill in your brother's spot. So, what are the 5 things? Good, that's 1. Excellent. No. 5 things you should memorize. You teach you this when you're kids. Thank you, 5 pillars of Islam. So what are they again? Say what? What are 5 pillars of Islam? Huh? Saum, good. Hajj. We already mentioned that. Excellent. The most important one, Shahada. And the last one is? Zakat. Okay. This is the answer the Prophet ﷺ gave. So he's essentially telling him, this is the key. Okay, to be entering paradise. This is the key. Okay. To enter paradise, you need to fulfill these 5 things. But he didn't say shahada. He said what? أَلَّا تُشْرِكَ بِاللَّهِ. Okay. Do not ascribe any partners with Allah, which is the definition of La ilaha illallah. This is the definition. You worship only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't ascribe any other deity or any lords or anything else other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he gave him, these are the keys. I'm not going to go over the pillars of Islam. We went through this before. But what's interesting is the Prophet ﷺ, what he did next. He did not just say that. So he gave him what's sufficient, the keys. These are the keys. But what's beautiful is that the Prophet ﷺ knew Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He understood the potential of Mu'adh. And it's not just entering heaven. It's something beyond that. And so he told him, أَلَا أَدُلُّكَ عَلَىٰ أَبْوَابِ الْخَيْرِ. Should I not point to you, or shall I not guide you towards the gates of goodness, the gates of bliss? So this is something of a higher rank. And so he told him, الصَّوْمُ جُنَّةٌ. He mentioned 3 things, Prophet ﷺ. So these are after your obligations. He said, الصَّوْمُ جُنَّةٌ. Fasting is a shield. A shield from what? From sins. That's 1. Excellent. From what else?
All illness. All kind of illnesses.
Okay, all kind of ailments and illnesses.
Your desires.
Good, excellent. Shield from your desires, defense from your desires. And hellfire. Is that right? It's a shield from the hellfire. The Prophet ﷺ, this was a hadith, another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned this so many other times. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, الصيام جنة من النار كجنة أحدكم من القتال. So he said that the fasting is a shield from the hellfire, similar to how you have a shield on the battlefield. When you go to the battlefield, you don't just go, commando. You have a shield. Nowadays they have bullet vests, I guess, and helmets. But you wear a shield, something that will help you in the battlefield. What's interesting that there's another hadith that is kind of weak, but some of the companions mentioned this also. They said that your fasting is a shield as long as you do not puncture it. That would make sense. You don't want to walk in with a punctured shield. But how do you puncture your shield?
Don't fast properly.
Don't fast properly. So what do you mean don't fast properly?
You don't fast completely, meaning there's a fasting of the eyes, fasting of the heart.
Good, excellent. The Prophet in the hadith said, الصوم جنة فمن صام فلا يرفث ولا يفسق. لا رفث ولا فسق ولا فسوق, right? فلا يرفث ولا يفسق. Do not say bad things or commit transgressions, I guess. And so when you fast, you don't want to puncture that fasting. You don't want to commit ghiba. Some of the companions said, al-ghiba tudakhliqu al-sawm, right? That it punctures the fasting. It puts holes in your shield. So commit ghiba and doing some other things. But interesting, they also said, that asking for forgiveness after this happens patches it back again. And you plug the hole back again. So even if you're fasting, you do it, you're able to kind of recover that shield again by just patching, by asking for forgiveness. But when you're fasting, you shouldn't do this. And it's really important that we fast. And I'm going to tell you why. Or something one of the benefits of fasting.
It develops the taqwa, and taqwa is also a shield.
It develops taqwa, yes. But I'm trying to get to that.
Yeah, one of the definitions of taqwa is...
We are, so we're created from body and spirit. Is that right? Okay. Which came first? The soul came first. Is that right? Basil, what came first?
Body.
What came first? What are the options? Take a guess.
Spirit and body.
Thank you. You are listening. Okay. So somebody told you, spirit and body.
No.
Okay, so what came first?
The body, of course.
The body, of course.
Then Allah puts the soul in the body.
Okay. But where were the souls before?
In the mouth.
Did they exist or not exist?
Oh, wow.
I'm serious. It's a question. Do our souls exist before our creation? Yes.
Yes, 50,000 years.
Before our, my body, yeah, because when we all brought to Allah, the time of Adam's creation, and that's why we were given free will.
So our soul is created first. Okay? Our soul is created first, and then our body. When Adam was created, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had taken out from his back every soul that is to be created. Okay, so our souls exist way before our bodies.
Okay, so our souls.
Yes. Me, you, everybody else.
Yes.
Until the day of judgment. Yes.
So for Adam alayhi salam, the body was there, and Allah puts the soul in his body.
Yes.
So where was that soul?
I'm not talking about Adam, I'm talking about us.
Yeah.
For a reason. We're going to get to that.
Okay.
Just bear with me, okay? Now, why am I saying this? Because the original is the soul. Now, what's the point of the body?
Actions, the soul?
It's a? No. Well, actions are necessary. But what's the body? I need the body. It's a host. I shouldn't say a host. But it's a vessel. It's a carrier. Okay? For your soul. Alright. So, which one is supposed to serve which? Is the soul supposed to serve the body, or the body serve the soul? The body is supposed to serve the soul. Good. Now, what do we do nowadays? We serve our body for our body. How much do we eat? A lot. I'm just saying, we indulge in so many bodily pleasures. Okay? Food is the most amazing pleasure for many people. They can travel 2 hours to experience a fancy restaurant, okay? And just write on their Facebook, oh yeah, I was here in this restaurant. We're guilty of it, everybody is, right? I can't help myself sometimes. I hear of a good Arab, Middle Eastern barbecue restaurant, and I just feel the desire to sometimes just go. Only did it once though, after that.
The barbecue was sunnah.
Sorry?
The barbecue was Prophet's favorite food, right?
Yes, but doesn't mean you travel for 2 hours to do it.
He might have.
I'm just saying, what's your purpose?
I mean, at that time, he
Yeah,
might
Sheikh, listen, what's your purpose? The pleasure of your soul? No, that's not, come on. It's the pleasure of your body, okay? Let's not play around. Okay? Yeah, you have to be honest with yourself. Okay. Now, however, when the problem is nowadays we nurture the body so much, it actually overtakes the soul. Our feeding habits should be done to cater the soul. We should eat enough to be able to pray, to feed the soul. Our body needs to be healthy. We need to exercise so that it can carry the rest of a longer time to your soul. We need a healthy body for a healthy soul. But whatever the case is, but once the exercise go beyond the limits, the normal limits, this is bad. You see some people with interesting habits. At one point, I almost became one of them. But I see my brothers, the other brothers in the community, society. They're gym junkies, protein junkies, supplement junkies, a lot of junkies. So that junk is going into the junkie body. It's just too much. Okay, you go beyond the point of what you're supposed to be doing. Fasting gives you the ability to do the opposite. What it does, it enables your soul to supersede your body, to take control of it. So you're dropping down to food. Okay, you're trying to stay away from sins, not to puncture your shield or not to lesser your fasting. And so really, your act of worship, and you're doing all these things because you want to enable the nurturing of your soul. And once your soul elevates, this is how it also becomes a shield. It protects you. You put really in reality what you're supposed to be focusing on. Okay? The soul is what connects us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is how it's a Jannah. So the Prophet said, As-Sawmu Jannah. That's the first one. And then he said, وَالصَّدَقَةُ تُطْفِئُ الْخَطِيئَةِ. Right? And charity, are we talking about any charity? We're talking about extra charity, not zakat. What it does, it extinguishes sins. When we say extinguishes sin, the Prophet said, and similar to how the water extinguishes fire. Is there anything remaining of the fire? No. Which means that it really does eliminate sins. So the more charity you give, the better. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned the third thing he said, وَصَلَاةُ الرَّجُلِ فِي جَوْفِ اللَّيْلِ, and the prayer of the man in the what's jawf? Jawf, which means in the middle. I guess the good translation is middle. But in the depth of the night. Okay? So if you want to find out what the middle is, just take from Maghrib to Fajr and then divide by half how many hours that is the middle. And then the Prophet ﷺ did not give a reward for that. But what he did was he recited a verse in the Quran. And then the first of the Quran is تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ خَوْفًا وَطَمَعًا وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ جَزَاءً بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. So Prophet ﷺ, after this, he did not tell you the reward. So some of the scholars say the reward of praying in the middle of the night is also extinction of sins. But the Prophet ﷺ told us in this verse of the Quran, which might be a better explanation. He said that these people, تَتَجَافَى جُنُوبُهُمْ عَنِ الْمَضَاجِعِ. تَتَجَافَى, junubuhum means your side, okay? تَتَجَافَى means literally that their sides shun and distance themselves from their recumbencies. Recumbency is just a general word of anything that you kind of feel relaxed on. So it includes your couch, your reclining position, your, what is the reclining couch, what's that called? I forgot. Lazy boy. Your lazy boy chair, okay? Including your beds. So their sides, what they do, processes to the jafa, it almost shuns it, just uncomfortable. It just deserts it, it leaves it. Why? The jafa ju'an malaja, what do? They call upon their Lord, they worship their Lord. Out of fear and hope and desire for the bounties of Allah Ta'ala. And from what we gave them, they spend. And then the Prophet ﷺ, in this verse in the Quran, is beautiful. It says, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ. A soul does not know مَا أُخْفِيَ لَهَا مِنْ قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. What is hidden for them, talking about in Jannah as reward, from قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. Things that are pleasing to the eye, comfort to the eye. This is the reward of it. Right? جَزَاءً as a reward بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, as a word for what they were doing. So this is the reward of these things. Things of unparalleled pleasure, unparalleled, beautiful things in Jannah that nobody can ever describe. Nobody has seen, but you see it, you it's just so soothing, it's just beautiful for the eye. And so this is the reward for them. Then the Prophet ﷺ didn't stop there. He said, should I not, أَلَا أُخْبِرُكَ بِرَأْسِ الْأَمْرِ وَعَمُودِ وَذَرُّ السِّنَاوِي. In this case, the Prophet ﷺ had used a camel, by the way, to give a description. He said, should I not tell you what the head of the matter is? Its backbone and its apex. We'll stop here, inshallah.